Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Marta Skik Harich, who is a wealth and profitability strategist and founder and CEO of Prestige Business Enterprises. Marta, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I'm looking forward to learning from you, and I think that it's so important that we all look at our lives personally and professionally as a process of learning. And so I know you've got a lot of experience in your background, your entrepreneurial journey that you've learned from and made some revelations in your life that you share with your clients. So I want to find out all about your story, but get us started with your background, your entrepreneurial journey up to this point in your career.
Oh, wow, Mike, it's a great question because for me, my entrepreneurial journey started when I was very young. And it wasn't because I was successful or wealthy in creating a business at a young age, but it's because I had a mindset that later on helped me create the success that I'm in right now. So it's interesting because my childhood was not the first glance where you could see a fairy tale success. I had many obstacles that people would not necessarily endure or find favorable in their development. So I'd like to share some of those with you because I'd like to help identify regular everyday challenges that could potentially steer you down the wrong path, but it's absolutely important to identify them so that you know when these challenges occur, all you have to do is change your mindset to move to a better place where you can make the right decisions.
Yeah, that's so important that you even recognize that, looking back you didn't just look at your life and go, here's where I am now, but you're looking back going, you know what, here's a pillar where this happened and it could have gone this direction, but I chose to take the high road. So that's amazing.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And it's interesting because the obstacles that I overcame, I didn't realize that I overcame them until much later in life. I had no idea that I was overcoming obstacles because as we're growing up as kids, we find life that we're living in as normal. Like if we're not comparing ourselves to others, we don't see how others are living life. So these obstacles that I'm realizing now were challenges, I feel pretty great, and I want to high five that 7-year-old girl that was overcoming these things as she was growing up. So, for example, my parents and I immigrated from Poland to the U.S. when U.S. had a shortage of engineers, and my dad and my mom and I moved here, and I left my childhood home, right? But the U.S. was a land of opportunity and dreams. And here, my parents told me that we can do anything you want to do. You can be anyone you want to be as long as you work hard and get educated. So they looked at me and said, you can create whatever life you want. So for me, that was normal, right? So back in Poland, we used to have to walk down the street to pump water out of a well for consumption and bathing. My mom and I would fill up 2 buckets and carry them back up to our house. So that wasn't very convenient, right? When we wanted to talk to family members, we'd have to either ride our bikes or walk 2 kilometers down the road so that we can hop on a phone at one of our friends' houses whose neighborhood happened to be set up for telephone wiring. So it wasn't very convenient, right? During the winters, my mom and I had to take a train to Warsaw, to the city, and we'd have to get in a line to get food at 4 a.m. so that we'd be at the front door by 8 a.m. when the door opened. At that point in time, there was a lot of scarcity in Poland. It was right during the Solidarity movement. There was a lot of political change and chaos, so it wasn't favorable for families. So we'd wait in line and we'd trade in our tickets for a pound of ham and a loaf of bread for the week. And that's a life that we led for several years until we moved here to the U.S. So when we first moved here, my dad had a steady job and he had $17 in the savings account, right? All of a sudden, everything became abundant. Grocery stores had lots of food in their aisles. There were tons of bananas and Cheerios and things I've never seen before, right? So it was interesting because, we'd go in and we'd buy a few pounds of bananas. My mom would eat them, we'd scarf them down because we've never had bananas in our lives before. So it was just a really, really interesting change. When we first moved here, we moved into an apartment. It was less than 500 square feet, not the ideal conditions. We lived there with 3 other families, and my bed was a couch cushion underneath a desk. My mom was a school teacher when she was in Poland. Here she was a cleaning lady. We took public transportation everywhere or walk whenever we needed to go buy something. It was after probably about a year of savings that we were able to buy a car and get a new apartment to live in by ourselves. But my parents always instilled, all right, work hard, get educated, make sure you have faith in yourself and your family. So fast forward, I'm enrolled in first grade, right? I'm enrolled in first grade and my schooling is not enjoyable. Let's just put it that way. I was bullied, my hair was pulled, I would get slapped, spit on, tripped in hallways. I was mocked for not speaking the language very well. So it was very traumatic for me. When I came home, I didn't have many friends, and I would just sit in my room and I would read and educate myself. And I wouldn't tell my parents what was really going on in school because I think it would have been hard for them to hear that. So I decided that I would just get out of this rut. I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to feel lower than. I didn't want to feel worthless in school, right? So I persevered. I changed my mindset. I watched TV. I watched Mork and Mindy, Bewitched, and Mr. Ed. I loved watching the talking horse. He made me laugh, and I learned English that way. So 7-year-old Marta, now looking back at her, she was the one that started not caring about the way others thought about her and started doing something about it. So she turned her struggle into a success, which I think is pretty interesting because most of us don't do that very frequently, or maybe don't realize we had opportunities to change our lives with a situation like that. So there's pivotal moments too as I was getting older. When I was in college, for example, I was instructed to take the traditional path of going into medicine because it was stable. I would have a stable career. And I loved it and it was great. But I decided that I needed to follow my passion. And my passion was doing something else. It was business, math, and everything. So I decided to change career paths, which was very challenging for me because as an only child, I had to be in something stable. And I disappointed my parents, I disappointed my teachers, and once again, I had to stand up for myself and change that mindset to see the possibilities in paths that are less traveled, in paths that maybe those, my family around me, didn't fully understand, but I really needed to take that risk. Something else that's really noteworthy on my entrepreneurial journey is that I didn't come from a business background. I didn't come from family wealth. So everything that I learned about money, about investing, about accounting, taxes, how to lead businesses and help them grow, I really learned from my own experience and then later on surrounding myself by incredible mentors and business owners, which has been absolutely invaluable to me. Another thing that's really noteworthy is when I got married, I immediately became an Insta-mom, right? I became a stepmommy to 3 great kids. And although it's completely unrelated, it's absolutely related to the way I function in business, is that there's a lot of stereotypes, right? Being a stepmom. So we make our lives all about creating our own opportunities, creating our own path and not listening to the naysayers that are following that traditional path. We really have taught our kids to lead in their own direction, and that's how we parent as well. We include our kids in our business, we bring them to work, we bring business home. When clients visit us from out of the country or out of the state, we all go out to dinners together. It's like we don't separate our home and business lives to what some people would think is an obstacle or an excuse not to do. We turn that around and just make it a part of life. So I think in doing so, we allow our kids to lead a life that's normal to them, and hopefully it sets them on a successful path down the road. What do you think, Mike? So one of the things that I've also learned is that success is an interesting concept. It could be defined in many measures, but you can ask 10 people what success is and you'll get 10 different answers. For me, success is a mindset. Success is taking ordinary circumstances and creating something better, taking the path less traveled, not being trapped by opinions of others, and not being defined by others' expectations. To me, success is making the best of your surroundings and incorporating them in every single thing that you do.
So what do you think gave you that perseverance, that mindset to overcome and achieve?
That mindset was created from when I was a child. From the moment that I was bullied at school, I came home and I did something about it. From the moment that I realized in school, in high school and graduate school, in undergrad, that I didn't want to take a certain path career-wise, I did something about it. I stopped, researched, and really took that risk. I counted on myself, and I was able to have faith in God and faith in my own abilities, that I've been created in a way that has all the success written inside me. I just have to be able to access it and be able to materialize it for everyone.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that faith, because I think that is a thread that a lot of people kind of think, oh yeah, that's just one little piece of my life, but it really is a thread that carries through personal, professional. It ties into that perseverance. It gives you something to strive for, doesn't it?
It most certainly does. It's interesting because I think you said it beautifully. It ties into every single thing that we do. It's that fiber that carries us through and helps us get through the day. In addition to faith, having a mindset where you can look at opportunities and not see them as challenges, but as opportunities. You can look at situations knowing that you have faith in higher powers and in yourself. You can really do something about it, and you can really make a difference with the tiniest decisions.
And here's another aspect too. Do you agree with this? It's one decision that builds upon the other, that gives you that momentum to know that you're on the right path.
Absolutely. It's the momentum and the confidence. And the more of the little decisions you make in your favor that are successful and faith-based, the more confidence you have, because you see that they're turning out in the direction and the manner with which you want them to go, even though that path was not necessarily the original path you thought it was going to be. But the decisions that you made to get there have been instrumental, and they've created something larger than yourself, or something larger that you could have even thought of. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it makes me think also that one level of success leads to the next level of success, because it gives you that positive motivation and affirmation in reality, like, ooh, what I'm doing is right, and now I'm even more motivated than ever because I see that this worked and this worked. And when you change a little bit, it's not like, oh, this was a failure, I did this wrong. It's just a slight pivot.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it's in every aspect of our life, not only in our education, not only in our careers, but it's also at home. If I didn't have all the experiences I had as a stepmom and as a mom, I wouldn't be in the same position as I am right now, because it really allowed me to juggle and redefine for myself what I believe is normal and what I believe life should be like. And by creating in my own way, actually just unshackled me from expectations from society and from others. So it actually freed me to be able to move forward in a more positive, successful, momentous way.
Yes. So we've talked a lot about these key attributes that you noticed in yourself. Is that some of the things that you find that when you're working with your clients, and we'll get into, how you serve your clients, but do you find that you kind of have developed a little bit of a blueprint from the lessons you've learned and said, you know what, here's the path to success, in my opinion, here's why that it works, and here's why it should work for you?
I've certainly thought about it that way. When we engage with our clients and just people in general, there is a successful way to engage in your business, in your home family life that is a blueprint that really can be stamped in every aspect of your life. And it's very, very simple. It's not complicated. You don't need to get a PhD in, philosophy or theology to be able to execute on this. It's really everyday practical things that can get you to the next step.
Yes. So what I would wonder is, I think that this is one of these overarching attributes that people go, what is my purpose? So what is my why? So some of the things that you have seen that you've overcome in your past, your struggles from youth to even as you've developed your business and followed your passions, what would you say that your purpose and why is in your personal and professional life?
That's really interesting. It's only this year, once I've been a little bit more settled with kids and business growth, that I was actually able to step back and look at it. And I really believe that the purpose for me is to help people fall in love with money and to allow them to use it for a greater good, to marry everything that they're doing in their lives, from a professional career, traveling, home lives, and incorporate finances in a way that makes everyone feel better, pay it forward, and create extraordinary wealth mentally, emotionally, and with your faith and with your career and family.
Yes, and if you can accomplish that, you can kind of check the box and say, I have contributed to society.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I think it's a lifelong journey for me. And as I discover more of the successes that my clients have and they share with me, and more of the successes that my family has that I can see, it develops my skills and it sharpens my saw so that I can then pay it forward to others.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your wealth and profitability strategist focus in your professional life. Tell us a little bit about what that entails.
Sure. So going back to that blueprint, wealth and profitability are on so many different levels. And we use our tax and accounting practice really as a tool to be able to help people find their paths easier and to be more productive, profitable in their businesses and their home life. So as a CPA and as tax and accounting professionals, we see people's tax returns and their accounting financial statements, and those are great, but there's so much knowledge in them and so much opportunity to take all those financial numbers and create a picture and almost reverse engineer what the client is searching for. And even though we can reverse engineer all these returns and there is a blueprint and a formula, each plan is different. because each person's personal lives are different. Their short-term and long-term goals are different. So what we do as an overarching strategy, we create strategic tax plans that encompass people's short and long-term goals to reverse engineer where they want to be 3 and 5 years down the road, and then reverse engineer exactly the steps they need to take now to help them succeed. Mike?
So when you help them reverse engineer, don't you think that that helps them clarify even some personal and business goals that they didn't even know they had themselves?
Absolutely. And what's interesting too, when spouses come in or business partners come in that aren't spouses, they don't realize that their business they don't realize that their business goals are different sometimes. They might be operating on the same page, but they have different visions of where that business is going. And it's also interesting when spouses come in together as well, their views are many times so different from the other spouse. And sometimes that's that first conversation or interaction they're having with each other in that capacity. It's I consider myself a business psychologist in a way.
Yep. Yeah. So what are some of the reactions you get from clients that you're taking down that path?
They thank me for the clarity. It's clarity, but then it's more so their eyes. I can see that a light bulb was lit and I could see the excitement. I feel like I've unburdened them with all that business administration items that need to be taken care of and thought of, and allow them to just be themselves and be masters in their craft so that they can take their unique craft and align to their divine purpose.
Yes. Have you ever had a client tell you that, now I feel like a new lease on my business life. You've given me that clarity, and now they take their business further than they thought it would even go?
Yes. And it's interesting because many times people will realize that they don't even want to be in that business, because when we uncover their short and long-term goals, that's not where they want to focus. They can use their talents in so many other ways to get them to their end in mind much quicker than in the current business vehicle that they've chosen.
Wow. And while that might feel like, we need to stop this and this was a mistake, in reality, that's a gift you're giving them to help them realize I might not be in the right business.
Well, I think it's a gift. Sometimes they don't necessarily think it's a gift because it's an upheaval in their current lives, right? They have to dig up all the roots and figure out which direction they want to go. And many times that is scary for individuals, the unknown, not knowing what direction to take next. But then we take their hands and we guide them through the process to make sure that they're, catching at least the larger considerations before they make their decision or before they decide which direction they're really going to turn.
Yes. Let's kind of talk a little bit about what specifically that you do without getting into detail, but where's the first place you start to help someone find and maximize their profitability?
The first place we start is with what's required of every single business. Your business tax returns and then your personal tax returns. We start there. Those tax returns have a wealth of knowledge that really many professionals don't uncover. They look at them reactively, prepare them in their rearview mirror, and file the tax return. Their compliance is completed, done, right? So our firm, when it was founded, I wanted to make sure that the numbers that we have are being used in a proactive way to create better lives for individuals, or at least to show them that there are other opportunities up for consideration. So when we look at these tax returns, we go through a series of proprietary questionnaires, and we created an internal system and process that takes clients through the journey. So we identify some of their core goals, their concerns, where they want their business to be 3, 5, 20 years down the road, and what their exit strategy is. And what we found is that once we identify those items, it provides more clarity for the current business and also for the household, for the clients. And they can see a bigger picture, and it allows them to step away from what they're constantly working in operations on a daily basis, allows them to see a 30,000-foot view that they normally wouldn't see themselves.
Yes. And don't you liken it almost to the example of the water in the bucket with the holes? And it's like, let's find those holes, plug them up as much as possible so that we can maximize what's coming in from the revenue side of things.
Yes, exactly. And what's interesting too, a lot of our clients, the first thing they think of when they get their business tax returns and personal tax returns prepared is to let's minimize taxes. Let's get our tax liability as low as possible. And although many times there are so many opportunities to do so, they don't necessarily do it for the right reasons. So sometimes it's better to have a larger tax liability. Other times it's better to have a lower tax liability, depending on what your short and the long-term goals are. However, in between there are so many strategies that can be used. There's over 1,600 tax strategies that can be sifted through to make sure we're using the appropriate ones. And once we identify what's appropriate and what the client is willing to do in their business to be able to apply these strategies, it then turns their business around. Instead of a reactive relationship to just filing tax returns, now we're strategic partners to help them create something that they always wanted. We're no longer their expense line item. We've become their profit center.
So if I'm remembering correctly, I think I heard somewhere that the tax code is somewhere around 70,000 pages, and you said there's around 16,000 tax strategies. That's a lot to have a business owner to try to figure out on their own.
There really is, it's 1,600 strategies.
Okay.
And
that's a lot.
Most professionals, it's a lot of strategies, and most professionals use a handful of them, maybe 20 tops, and they're the most common ones. But you can go into depth into so many more. And for me, that's been an enjoyment to not only educate myself on what those opportunities are, but also to find and see and if I can marry these strategies with the current business. And even if it works for the current business, it may not work for what the client's trying to accomplish 3 years down the road. So even though the tax strategies are there and available, it doesn't mean they're going to be used. But to me, it's really important to bring them to the forefront to continue having the conversation as to what needs to transpire within the business to get you to your goal.
And I get the feeling that you are a teacher and an educator to where you're not just saying, here's 1,600 strategies, do 4, 12, and 37, see you next time. You are helping them understand, you're explaining, you're teaching, and that they then can come alongside and go, yes, that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's all about the we can show them where the strategies are or what the strategies are, but at the end of the day, we have to implement them. And then we have to educate them to make sure that they're being used appropriately and if they really make sense for their business.
Excellent. Well, I think that we've talked so much about how you take that personal approach to helping people persevere and turning struggles into success and helping change mindsets and see that big picture and then learning the tax code and the strategies. So I just find that you take that full 360-degree holistic approach. I just love what you're doing, working with your clients. Wrap us up with some final thoughts, and then if someone is listening to this going, Marta, I want some of what you've got, what's the best way they can reach out and connect with you?
Beautiful. Well, I think small beginnings are stepping stones on our life path. I think success is just having the courage to continue traveling those stones when there's no clear direction to take. I really hope that the opportunities that I create for my family and for clients, that they can use to pay it forward as well and do other great things with them. And you can reach me at martash360.com.
I love it. Marta, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.